So right out the box, man, what's the biggest misconception you see patients having about ChatGPT or AI when it comes to medical advice?
Yeah, so man, I can go all day about this, but I think the biggest thing I really want to reveal is the way that you ask AI is very different now compared to, let's say, 2024, because AI has gotten smarter. There are these models called reasoning models. And if you're not careful enough, it'll take you down rabbit holes. And these rabbit holes actually delay care. So this is really important. And we see it all the time because a lot of our patients who do a lot of great due diligence and come out with all these AI outputs and deep research articles on different things, it actually creates a lot of burden when it comes to the conversations because it's too reductionistic. And the term reductionistic means that, you know, you're not defined by a cholesterol number or a sugar number. You're defined by you. But AI only has a sliver of information, right? And everything is out of context. So it's really important to put things like into context, for example, right? And here's a really good example, Steve. Yesterday, I had a patient come in and had this giant article about her advanced cholesterol panels, apolipoprotein B, Lp(a), et cetera, et cetera. And then she had this whole deep research, and she works for NASA, so she's an engineer. She had this whole deep research about it, about her lab work and stuff that she got at Function Health. And on it, it had all sorts of just like these red flags. It's like, oh my gosh, you're dying, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, I kind of simply look at her and I'm like, well, what does it tell you about like your sleep patterns? She's like, well, nothing. I didn't ask about it. Well, I think that's the problem, right? And so if your sleep patterns are messed up, your cholesterol panel's messed up, your lipoprotein B is messed up. So it's more like a flow chart and not like a singular thing on the island on its own, which is already what is the matter with medicine these days. So AI, what I find is that these output just meaning the things that you get when you ask AI questions, it's called an output. These outputs are getting patients like deeper into these rabbit holes that are not part of a flowchart. They're part of like this island on their own, right? And so a lot of patients are, oh, you're my cardiologist or you're my endocrinologist. Well, the ologists are basically already siloed into this framework, and that's a huge issue. And so what also happens on the doctor side is that we get these outputs and we're like, in our head, it's like, okay, we're integrative health, right? There's root causes for everything. So if you haven't addressed this, then this is not going to improve, right? If you're laying awake at night and you're doom scrolling, yes, your cholesterol numbers are going to be messed up. Your inflammation, your CRP is going to be messed up because you're doom scrolling at night, decreasing melatonin in the brain that we're never getting to deep sleep, right? And so it still requires a holistic view at it, but it's really hard to get artificial intelligence to give you an output that's more holistic because it's trained on non-holistic data is the main problem.
So I love what you just said because you nailed something. It sounds like AI is a lot like medicine is practiced nowadays. Everything's in silos. And you know as well as me, taking a functional medicine, integrative medicine approach, whatever you want to say, it is hours and hours of input from patients for us to build out those trees, figure out root cause. And AI, you type in one sentence of XYZ or you give it one set of lab work. Well, we do many functional medicine tests. We do many didactics. We look at, like you said, sleep, stress, and all. And if you only give AI a piece of the puzzle, it's only going to give you that piece of the puzzle back. That's kind of what I hear. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. And guess what? It's not just the patients doing it, the physicians are doing it too. A lot of
doctors are using AI, you're telling me? Really?
All the time. You know, a lot of my doctors, you know, I'm the executive director of Physician Transformation Institute in our doctors group. And that's what they're using. And their prompts are super reductionistic too. They're actually using it for their own health, to be honest with you as well, right? But like once again, like everyone starts going down rabbit holes, it actually worsens healthcare expenditure in the U.S. It doesn't get better, is the thing. And the intention is good. Like I still think everyone should put their stuff into AI, but make sure it's also like a secure platform. If y'all are putting your stuff into the free version of these AI platforms, that's actually a big no-no. You don't necessarily want to do that. But if you have like either a pro subscription, enterprise subscription, something that's behind a security layer, then that's also important too. So that's really the second thing is like people don't understand that your data basically is being made public. If you use
So wait, hold on. You just said something. When people are putting their private healthcare information out there. So tell me, what are the stuff you see in people that are putting in AI that you know are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this?
labs, doctor's notes, doctor's appointments, any sort of medical data. And there's a patient really good. There's a patient that just put a bunch of things into Perplexity as one of the AI platforms. And Perplexity is not compliant in any way, shape, or form. It's security. And Perplexity is good because it searches the internet for you for the answers that you want, and it's great. But the problem is she uploaded her packet of like an ER discharge data, and her social security numbers on there. Like, and you don't want to do that, right? And so once it's on there, it's on there. There's no taking it off, right? It's just like uploading things onto social media. So you might as well just upload your social security number onto social media if you're putting stuff on there. But I mean, the last thing you want is really have your labs and all this data that's out there, right? It's gonna be a huge data security issue. And, unfortunately, it's nothing you can undo, but preventatively, you want to be able to prevent doing stuff like that in the future.
That's a great call out. So I heard you say something, silos and rabbit holes and things. So the way I look at AI, you would think if you look at the media today, it's going to make people smarter about their health. But what you just said, it gets you down a rabbit hole. And nowadays you can ask it questions and it asks you questions. And I think that could make patients more anxious and confused and make problems worse because we know stress is an issue. How do you see that intersection there?
Steve, this is a trust issue, right? By far and large, like modern day and age, very few people actually trust their healthcare professionals. And I don't necessarily blame them. So when you start trusting technology and AI, is this smarter than your doctor? By knowledge, but not by reasoning, right? And so, but the thing is, a patient can chat with their AI for 3 hours if they want to, And so the trust and rapport gets built there. And so I don't challenge that that's the case. In an ideal situation, honestly, I think each doctor should have their own like AI digital twin AI bot, which we're actually building right now in our organization. And then he can have more of a controlled thing. But we're not there right now. I think whenever I talk about the word silo, I really mean like segregation. It's like people, because there's a distrust, they're chatting with their data. And although they're getting insights, AI's job is to make you happy. So if you are thinking about going down this rabbit hole, it will take you down the rabbit hole, never let you get out, right? And so the quality of your life is the quality of your reality. And if your reality is going down these different frameworks looking at your health, there could be some issues there. And I get it. Some doctors will take you down their reality and their silo, and I get it. But there's got to be a balance. I don't want people to think about AI as sort of the end all be all. Rather, ask higher quality questions. Here's a really good example, Steve. Recently, I talked to someone about infrared saunas versus dry saunas and the data behind there. And they're like, okay, well, there's better data on dry saunas. I'm going to do these dry saunas. And the day later, he's like, wait, but ChatGPT just told me like not to do dry saunas. I'm like, what is your input data there? And the input data is like, oh, I got dizzy after I left my dry sauna. Like, that's all you had, And so it's only looking at a transactional data. Transactional means that I am transacting to you. I'm letting you know that I got dizzy after sauna. And GPT's like, oh, you don't necessarily want to do that. You might be dehydrated, et cetera, right? And so I was like, why don't you put in what you really want to accomplish with the sauna and give it this really beautiful plan? So even the interaction with it's very reductionistic. And that's not asking high quality questions. Another low quality question example, going back to the cholesterol example, is this is my cholesterol panel. What I like, my doctor said is high. Like, what do I do about it? So, you know as well as I do, Steve, that for example, a lot of women, higher cholesterol actually has a better mortality outcome. But AI is not going to tell you that. It's like, oh, you want to lower cholesterol, you want to do this and that, et cetera, right? And so it's the framework of the understanding is super transactional also. And so what happens is if you open that chat again, it's pre-framed with all the conversations you had in that chat about your cholesterol panel, right? And then all of a sudden you have this chat that you've been interacting with for maybe months, and it's going down a giant rabbit hole. And then it takes a lot of energy for someone like me to come to my office to kind of undo that. Like, hey, like, don't worry about your cholesterol. But ChatGPT says, I know what ChatGPT says, but don't worry about cholesterol. Let's focus on this. Let's focus on the higher level thing, which is stress, trauma, sleep, insomnia, stuff like that, right? Which affects everything downstream.
Yeah, and you bring up, like, I like how it's another thing that just came to me that you explained is that as if you want ChatGPT or AI to be your doctor, a real doctor uses their eyes, they use their hands, they use their touch, and AI is never going to be able to do that. Like, you know as well as me, I can have somebody walk into a room and look at certain things, characteristics in their face with their eyes, their tongue.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is never going to be able to do any of that. Like, I can tell you so much about a person just by what their skin looks like, what their overall health is. But this is like, I look at AI, it's just a brain floating there, and it's never going to be able to see that kind of stuff. Is that, I mean, that's a way to look at it, right?
And also, like, we have phlebotomy in our office, right? So we have some people that are like, oh my God, I'm gonna need all this, like, holding their breath. I'm like, your cortisol is gonna be sky high during this lab draw. It's not gonna be accurate, right? ChatGPT is not gonna know that, right? So you're putting a high cortisol into ChatGPT. It's not going to know the situation that you had when you had the needle into your body, right? Or another good one is that if someone is like really sick that day and they constantly contracted like this, their serum bicarbonate is going to be high because they're not allowing the diaphragm to breathe in appropriately, and their acid-base structure and their lab work is going to be off. ChatGPT is not going to know that stuff, right? And so it's all about the framework of what you have, which does require a doctor to kind of look at it and say, hey, let's reframe this. Yeah.
I like that. So what type of, we can kind of get into a little bit about what you would like. So I feel like we've kind of been like, we've pointed out the limitations of ChatGPT, which is a good thing. But how do you see it being used productively to help whether a patient or a clinician make better decisions? I'm not saying the decision, but better decisions. What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's all about asking higher quality questions, right? So all the new models out in the internet right now are reasoning models. And so, let me explain that first, and then I'll explain what that is. So when like this stuff like ChatGPT first come out, it's designed to acquire knowledge and spit it out and give it to you. Okay, it's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generator. So that's designed to be retrieve information, spit it, retrieve information, spit it. And so in 2025 and on, the old models are gone. The new model is what's called a reasoning model, where it behaves and think very effectively. Okay, so it can reason through things. So if people were using ChatGPT 2024 before, you're just asking for information, the new reasoning models now are so compelling that it's like doing the thinking for you, okay? And so the way you actually want to interact with it, if you put your data in a secure location and stuff like that, is more about ideally what you want out of life and not something reductionistic. Going back to the cholesterol example, right? Instead of saying, what can I do about my cholesterol, right? Let's say that I feel words, I feel that the way my body is right now, there's so much pain and I feel like I'm getting older, period. Okay. And then maybe put some data in there and try to figure it out. So whenever you use I feel, what happens is that the reasoning model starts super high up here. And then it may even start asking clarifying questions, right? And so the I feel statements are really good. And then the second thing is, if it gives you stuff that you don't like, you also have to call it, I don't really like this because X, Y, and Z, right? Instead of, most people would just like try to reprompt it and say, do this, do this, do this. Don't tell AI what to do. Tell it how you feel about the initial input, And then whenever it gives you like data, tell you how you feel about the actual output, and it'll kind of readjust. So I feel. And then you can even say, this sucks, I don't like this, So this is called emotional prompting. Emotional prompting is highly desired in the AI world. Y'all can look this up. Literally type in emotional prompting GPT. You see all this data of how it has a much better output. So emotional prompting. So not surprisingly, in 2025, the number one use case for AI chatbots is for self-help. In 2024 is to retrieve information from the internet. Now it's self-help. And it's because the reasoning model is just so much better at it.
So that's a great, you talk about self-help. I think one of the challenges, and this goes back to relationships and personalities of people, and especially with clinicians too, I think sometimes, I mean, we're all guilty of it. We get in our own way. We only hear the one story. And I think that's one of the reasons why maybe AI is so popular, is because the AI is not going to talk back. You tell the AI, I want to go here, it's going to go there. You tell the AI, like you just said, I don't want to go there, it won't go there. So it makes you feel more confident and trustworthy of having that conversation with the AI bot than it does with your own provider. And I can see, like you just mentioned, how that can build trust, and thus I'm going to keep going back there and I won't go to my clinician. I mean, do you see that being a problem actually?
Yeah, because it becomes addictive, right? It's the same thing as doom scrolling. AI is giving you hits of dopamine and you become addicted to it. So, I mean, here's the elephant in the room. Character.ai got multiple lawsuits against it, guiding teenagers to self-harm. You're like, well, why would AI do that? Well, the whole premise of the company is Character.ai. You're making a fictional character. It's almost like you're writing a fictional book, right? So AI is pre-prompted to have a view, right? And so so all these things you see on the internet about the AI, like creating instructions of making a noose or hiding the noose marks from the parents, like this last lawsuit, right? People are just saying, oh, like, why would AI do that? Well, once again, AI is pre-prompted to behave in a character. Nowadays, the more you interact with it in your own paid subscription, whether it's Gemini or whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, it's tailoring it to you. So so the master AI is having a relationship with you, which means your AI is already biased towards you. Okay. And so if Steve, if I go to your ChatGPT account and ask a question versus my account, the output looks totally different, even though it's a new chat, is because it already knows like who we are, for example. Right. And so, so when someone says, oh, AI says this, yeah, AI in your account that you've been interacting with for a couple of years, right? And so we shouldn't use the words AI says this. Let's talk about, more reasonable things of what we're actually looking at, right? And that's the unfortunate situation that we're kind of experiencing right now, is that everyone has kind of succumbed to their consciousness and how they interact with AI, and everything becomes quote unquote individualized, but then individualized just means that there's more bias there. So that's a sticky situation.
So to use AI positively, what are the areas nowadays you feel like the average patient out there can use AI? One, what platforms do you recommend? You already mentioned paid, so that's a no-brainer. But are there particular platforms you like more than others? And what are the things you think safely a patient can use AI to help them on a health or wellness type journey?
Yeah, so if people are actually using medical data, I always recommend any platform is good, as long as like more enterprise solutions. And you want to be able to make sure that it's at the highest security settings. So there's a thing called SOC 2 and GDPR, and also different letters. And then there's HIPAA, which is a different category than SOC 2 and GDPR. And so like always have some sort of a pro enterprise solution that has the security settings there, which means that the data you put into there is not training like the master AI, right? The other thing is I'm confident that when my daughters use AI, it's not going to tell them to do self-harm. Why? Because there's this feature called master prompt. It's in ChatGPT. It's a lot of these things. If you're using ChatGPT's bottom left settings icon, I mean, that might be out of date by the time this releases, the settings icon, and there's like this master prompt of how do you want the AI to behave. I basically have a love letter for my daughters that's already in there that says there's no such thing as right or wrong. They're just patterns, and there's patterns in life. And mommy and daddy love you unconditionally no matter what. And so it's basically like it's this giant love letter. So what's happening is that the master prompt of the AI is behaving with unconditional love, right? And then I test it too. And I try to go towards that self-harm or something. It doesn't even want to go there. It's like, well, why? And so instead of saying it's a bad thing, it says, well, let's talk about a little further, like why you behave this way. Is it okay if you want to share with your parents, right? And so everyone should have a master prompt, because if you don't have a master prompt, it's companies like OpenAI or Google, they're going to have their master prompt, which basically it doesn't really have a huge amount of safeguards. And so, but it's something I'm really passionate about, is like have a love letter for your kiddos and even for yourself, for your spouse, right? Of how you want the AI to actually behave. But any of the platforms are
Could you use AI to help you build your master prompt, to put in there and ask you the questions to help build that so you get the key qualities you want? Is that a safe thing to do?
Yeah, simply put in, hey, I'm building this master prompt for my AI for myself and for my kiddos. I want it to always behave very positively. Don't want to include any self-harm. Here's my philosophies. I carry more of a Taoist and Buddhist philosophies and Chinese, and here's my philosophies in here. And so that's sort of like the master prompt lesson, And so I tell ChatGPT, actually I don't use ChatGPT, I use Gemini. I tell Gemini to like create this master prompt for me and then how it should behave. And I also ask it to ask me clarifying questions of what else should I be actually asking, right? And then that actually creates the prompts for me. And it takes 5 minutes, but man, it makes a huge impact on the way that your AI actually interacts with you.
Is the reasoning skills of AI to the point where if a patient wants to use this for helping with health and wellness, is it available to have it ask you questions? I do that. I find myself doing that more and more nowadays, asking it to help me with questions to help me further get to where I want to get. Do you find that helpful in terms of like health and wellness stuff?
I think everyone should use it. Mm-hmm. So, my favorite line for any prompt in AI at the very end is default to asking me clarifying questions, like by default, right? And so it's really a back and forth, and that's what's great about these reasoning models. And the new models aren't smarter; they reason better. And so, Gemini 5. Or not Gemini, GPT 5.1 just came out. There's Claude Opus 4.5. All these models, they reason, right? They're looking at data and reasoning it in a particular way. So if you ask it to ask you clarifying questions, or just ask like, hey, what else should I be asking? I'm not even thinking about. That's another one of my favorites. It comes out with all this stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty good. Or this is a terrible idea. Like, why are you even asking this, right? And so always default to do that. It is not a replacement for doctors or healthcare professionals. I have yet to find an AI that can replace really my recommendations based on my framework. And so it's really hard to do that. There's companies that are coming out, like Fullscript's coming out with something called Fullscript Journeys. Fullscript is this one of the largest supplement distribution platforms of prescriptive supplements. And Journeys is basically they're coming out with a whole like AI interaction with your lab data and supplements and stuff like that. That's coming out shortly. And that actually synchronizes with your physician or with your healthcare professional. I think that's really, really cool, for example, right? So that way you kind of have a hybrid, like an oversight plus something you can talk to. And then the other type that is not linked to physicians, no companies such as Function Health, which is huge nowadays. My issue with it is that it relies solely on AI pre-prompts. And I see a lot of these reports. And I don't really like them. It's the problem, right? And there's no consistency. Two people can have the same data, and the AI output looks a little different because these models are always changing as well. And so that makes me a bit hesitant when people are getting stuff on Function Health and stuff like that. Even the MRI reports, there's a lot of AI outputs on there. And so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying like take that with caution. And if you take your Function Health and all these lab results to the data, do not expect your doctor to interpret it, because their framework may be really, really different, right? It's actually one of my pet peeves when patients order labs and have me to interpret it, because you're like siloing one data, but there's other data set that's far more important, like sleep data, biometrics, and stuff like that, right? And so the assumption nowadays is that, oh, the more data I have, the better it is. No, actually, quite the opposite. Is that because everything is in a flow chart and there are these things that are downstream, the more data you have, the more has to be investigated in what's upstream. It's a lot of times that like it takes away from the art of practicing medicine, right? Which is to have a very linear order of root cause analysis. That's what we do in integrative medicine, right? Of stress, trauma, sleep, relationships, all that affect hormones, autoimmunity, micronutrients, et cetera, which is down here. But then most of the lab data is down here, but doesn't really address anything up here, right? Yeah.
So I've got a question for you. So I know your passion for practitioners and making sure that they're healthy, because many of us, we give and we give and we give. And a lot of times we empty the cup and we don't realize that our own health is bad. So I know your passion for that. And that's that you spend hours doing that. But when it comes to AI, if your doctor's not using AI, do you see that as a bad thing or a good thing? But how can AI be used to help that practitioner gain some of their time back, still take care of patients at a high level, but maybe take some of that aspect out of things? Is that kind of where you see AI going? I'd love to get your take on that, because I know that's at the crossroads where you're at in life right now.
Yeah, so all healthcare professionals should be very well versed in artificial intelligence and engaging with artificial intelligence. So actually, my organization, Physician Transformation Institute, we made the very first AI certification course for healthcare professionals 3 years ago, right? And it's free. Go to physiciantransformationinstitute.com, be a member. On the back end, you'll see a bunch of different courses there. It's completely free. We're a nonprofit. And so, and then we just launched our 8-part docuseries called The Soul of Medicine, where we talk about how we're kind of losing the soul of medicine. And there's an AI section, then there's an AI episode where we talk about how AI actually helps recover the soul of medicine. And this is how it works. So doctors didn't used to be valued for knowledge alone. Doctors used to be valued for the way we interact with the community. It wasn't until maybe 100 years ago that doctors' main value is knowledge. We're at the age right now where AI is far more knowledgeable than any of us. And what's happening is that we're seeing the shift that doctors and other healthcare professionals, not just doctors, but all healthcare professionals, are starting to be valued for their bedside manner, for the interaction and stuff like that, right? And so if a patient's not coming for knowledge, what are they really coming for? And what the public really wants is not a transactional relationship. Oh, I'm sick, here's a Z-Pack. What they really want is more of a transformational relationship, right? And that takes time and energy, and our current healthcare system is not really set up for that. Well, not yet. So in my other company called Synaptic, we're a managed service organization that sets up people for more of a transformational medicine, still within the Medicare fee schedule and stuff like that. Is what we have learned is that AI used in the right way can allow healthcare professionals to be far more impactful and interactive with patients. All right. So if I have a 30-page discharge summary from a hospital, like that better be auto-analyzed by the AI, and I'm able to chat with it instead of me trying to read 30 pages, which is terrible because I'm dyslexic. Right. So I can at least chat with the AI. So that's all retrieval augmentation, where it's augmenting retrieval information. So I think doctors at least have to try to retrieve information with artificial intelligence. If doctors aren't using AI scribes, well, that's a game changer. AI scribes is basically having AI, secure AI, all right, listen to the conversations, creating documentation, suggesting billing codes and stuff like that. What we do is we take that to the next level and use that to create CDS, clinical decision support. So we're actually making Dr. AI clones, if you will. And then that can interact within the organization. So I think all doctors have a fundamental understanding of artificial intelligence, how to interact with it and not be fearful. And Steve, I'm going to say it here maybe the first time. If everything is AI, then nothing's AI. Let me explain that. Years ago, there's these two type of doctors that use paper charts and doctors that use computers. Okay. Now you go to the doctor's office, you're not questioning, are you going to a paper doctor or a computer doctor? Right. Now people are like, oh, are you going to a doctor that's empowered with AI or not? Everything's going to be AI, which means nothing's AI, which means that this is part of where the evolution of medicine naturally is going. And there's no reason to fear it.
No, and that's, I love what you just said, that, I mean, the knowledge is the knowledge, right? And through AI, we have better access to knowledge, but as a pharmacist, you as a medical doctor, PA, nurse practitioner, it's that relationship with the patient is what it ultimately comes down to. And if you can have that relationship, because you know as well as me, much of what we do on an integrative side, it requires that patient to be motivated to make change. And the thing is, the much better relationship I have with that patient, the better I can get that person to buy in and make change, because it's their choice, right? You know that. But if I can give them knowledge and I have that relationship that they trust me now, I love what you just said. Like, that is powerful. And it's neat to see, because it's not about knowledge anymore. It's about a relationship. And that's kind of AI is kind of driving that, is kind of what I heard.
It is. And then there's another concept on top of that, which is called compounding legacy. I made it up. Compounding legacy means that, you know, I've practiced a number of years. My mom's an Eastern medicine doctor. She's practiced for decades. Like, this knowledge should be in a database, and that compounds over time, right? And so that knowledge will be here after I pass away, after my parents are no longer here anymore, right? And what happens is it allows the younger practitioners to pick up on that knowledge and interact with it. They could talk to it, they could type to it, right? It's called building a knowledge base. This is a new concept in medicine, but it is not a new concept in any other industry. Any other industry, everyone's building a knowledge base so the company can run and stuff like that. So Pharmacist, for example, right? I would love to go into a pharmacy site and say, hey, this is the situation for my patient. It's like, how do I write this compounding medication? While the patient's actually there talking to me, right? I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this methylene blue dosing, right? But hey, you know, I got this pharmacy that has this guide. Can I chat with the pharmacy bot to like understand like how to do this? How do I actually write this? And how do I send it to your pharmacy? What's your fax number? Right? Right? It's fast, right? And so like that allows more time for more of the transformational like discussions, and allow the prescriptive time to be like this short, right? The transaction time to be short. So we want to allow more time for that transactional face-to-face and less time for all the logistical, you know, stuff, right? And I wish all pharmacies will actually make their own AI knowledge bots. That'd be really awesome, right?
That would be cool. You know, and you just said something, carrying forward that knowledge, especially in the pharmacy world, right? Because many of the things that were old and were tossed out as garbage or harmful now are starting to rear their ugly heads back in. What are those AI? What are those things being searched in AI right now that are those things that are coming back that used to be old, that you see, are things that are probably going to be mainstream medicine in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
Like, peptides are huge right now. You know, Ozempics and tirzepatides, like that thing is decades old, you know? Like, there's nothing new about that, you know? And a lot of these age-old medications, whether it's, you know, ivermectin or all these things, like they're reframing it, right? And so what happens is that like we have to keep up. We don't have to keep up if we have AI on our side. So someone comes to me with a brand new product, which is, I can't even pronounce it. I don't even know what it is. And as they're talking to me, I have deep research on the side, and in 15 minutes is taking every publication about this and how it interacts with different things. And I'm just glancing at it. I was like, oh, okay, this is what this is. You know, it's a new cancer medication I've never heard of, for example, right? And so like, this is the age we are right now, is that we should be compounding data. But because I search this data, that data better be part of my knowledge base for the entire clinic. So all 9 providers are actually updated, right? Into the knowledge base, and we can talk about, you know, what that looks like. And so right now we're searching for new physicians to join a team, but I'm so confident they're going to do well. Why? Because we have a knowledge base I can talk to about how we've been practicing medicine, the outcomes, how patients have had their successes, though. So when they come into the practice, they already have like validity in the things that we're doing, and we can retrieve that information, right? And I wish like compounding pharmacy world is this way too. you know?
No, that's cool. No, that's really good. So because of the internet, social media, AI, that's how this stuff's blown up. Is there anything out there on the social media world right now that just kind of caught your attention? I know you're always into that kind of stuff. That's like, this is a hot topic, things that maybe interact with your world. Anything out there that catches your mind lately?
Yeah, I think there's, yes. Right now, there's so much focus on purpose, motivation, driven. I think now the stigma of mental health is officially gone. There's so much focus on like self-care and mental health right now. I think it's really awesome, right? And so I think it's so awesome. I actually came out with an app called superconscious.io, shameless self plug, that actually uses AI to help you understand your consciousness and goals, or where you want to go, your outcomes, your desires, and stuff like that. And then we do voice cloning. You can clone your own voice, and you can actually talk to yourself. So it's self meditation, right? So I've always really believed in that product of our consciousness is what we create every single second. And what I see right now is this entry into this consciousness in psychedelics, right? And purpose and motivation. So like moving forward, like this is the Wild Wild West when it comes to medicine, because we're not training any of that stuff. You know? And so, but people are actually wanting it now. And I think that's why in 2025, the number one use case is self-help and AI, because doctors can't answer any of those questions, right? And so, but this is where the trend is actually going, you know? And so that's one trend, which is basically like self-discovery, right? And consciousness. The second trend that I really see in the social media world is that a lot of the older senior physicians in like functional integrative health is also coming onto this consciousness trend, right? And I think what's happening, which is a good thing, is that we're starting to open conversations about like our actual purpose in our life and system and world. And the second trend can lead to two things. One, it can lead to resentment, which is really destructive. But unfortunately, it's very clickable on social media, right? Or two, it leads to self-discovery. So I think the second trend of like people bashing different each other. Well, I even see doctors bashing each other, which is totally unnecessary. Or different types of medicines, whether it's functional, integrative lifestyle medicine, conventional medicine, bashing each other, totally unnecessary. Like resentment has to go away. But I think the resentment's at an all-time high right now because no one is lacking knowledge and everyone is using quote unquote knowledge to frame their talk. Science says this, science says that. Well, science doesn't talk. Science is biased by nature, right? And so those are the really two trends that I see, one good, one bad. But nevertheless, it's an evolution of humanity.
Yeah, I like what you brought up there. And you know, as well as me, there's more and more data coming out about this whole feeling of worth, feeling of quality relationships, and your overall health outcome. Like that may be a bigger driver than what supplement you take and what diet you eat and all this, because that feeling of self-worth and community is maybe one of the biggest drivers we have of health. I think you're seeing the same studies that I'm seeing. It's quite amazing. Like even all the blue zone stuff, right? It was all about diet. Well, now maybe not. It's more about how those communities, the family units, all that kind of stuff. Do you kind of see that way?
In all the blue zones, Steve, the only thing they have in common is that the older you are, the more valued you are.
Exactly.
That's the only thing that's really common.
Well, so this generational knowledge of AI is just like that. We can keep that person even after they're gone, that knowledge there. Because you're right, because that elderly person in those family units is that hierarchy, and everybody looks to them and they go to them for that knowledge. And I like what that kind of a weird way we've got to that, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I want to see like people in hospice and palliative care like do their own digital twins and talk about what they might be uncomfortable talking about, like when they're alive, if you will, and put that into the knowledge base. I see AI chatbots as being intellectual properties of people in like living wills and stuff like that. I think that we're going that direction. I also see that like the way that the world is going right now, you can have an earthquake in Micronesia trigger the mindset of someone in Minnesota. Like that's where the social media world is kind of going, right? So like the thing is, the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our focus. And because we can curate whatever we can focus on, we have to be like cognizant about, is that stealing away energy from me from today or my mindset, or is that helping me support the things I want to do? So I think we've entered that era of every human can be a philosopher these days.
So kind of just as a wrap up right now, is there any one thing you see right now, whether it be, like you said, an integrative medicine that's either going to be a game changer moving forward, or you see like, oh, this is going to cause some problems? Anything like that you see out there? You always tend to be on the edge of stuff, so I value your opinion.
Psychedelics are a huge benefit. Going into, even in Houston Methodist Hospital, we have the largest psychedelic clinical trial, phase 3 clinical trial right now with military veterans, right? We're now talking about like curing depression instead of saying managing it, like with antidepressants, and that's where like ketamine and other psychedelics are there. So I'm a huge fan of psychedelics, and we're doing a psychedelic training program for doctors. Actually, this is our 4th year doing it, and so that's one I think is a big pro. There's another trend that's coming on that I think it's an issue. A little controversial, Steve, is companies that do direct to consumer for health-based services without a framework. It creates so much relationship issues and destruction within family units. Is because I had someone that did their own sort of like online ADHD testing and talk to the spouse, say, hey, look, I have ADHD. This is not my fault. And the spouse is like, no, like just because you have ADHD doesn't mean that you don't do the dishes. Blah, 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 right? And so like people are using these medical tools for their own discussions without a provider in the middle. That's not a great trend. There's no guidance there. And so I see that as a bit of a problem.
That's good. And I like that you called it out. I see that in the pharmacy world right now, where many manufacturers are cutting out you and cutting out me and going to these telehealth platforms and just sending drugs, powerful drugs to patients. And there's no relationship with the medical provider. I see the same thing. So I hear you on that. So,
or there is a relationship with a medical provider, but it's like an 8-minute transactional interactions. Okay, well, here you go. Right. So there's no like personalization with that. Like, it's great for their business. They can scale with that type of company, and eventually they'll just sell that to private equity and do whatever the heck they want to do. But, a lot of these companies are looking for quick exits and stuff, because I'm in the private equity world. And so like, there's the moral behind the story is that money still drives everything, even in healthcare, right?
No, you nailed it. No, that's for sure. It sounds like we got our topic for our next call. Next time we jump on one, I'd love to do psychedelics with you. I think that would be a hot topic that I think there's a lot of interest in right now. I see the same thing. Those are drugs for me. I was taught to put those on the shelf because those are bad guys. You don't touch them. I know how they work. But now we're finding you take those and combine it with psychotherapy and things like that, and it can be super powerful. So
psychotherapy, coaching, integration, man, it changes so many things physiologically in the body, from your immune system to gut health to your hormones to fertility. Like there's a lot that goes along with it. But that'll be the next podcast.
Okay, that'll be the next one. So Dr. Ron, this has been great. If people want to find out more about you, where do they go, whether they be a patient or they be a practitioner? Where can they find out more about you, buddy?
Yeah, so I'm actually retiring as a physician and getting into AI engineering for healthcare systems. So not taking patients right now. But for those of you who are healthcare professionals listening, find me on LinkedIn. Also, be a member of Physician Transformation Institute. It's free for physicians. And but LinkedIn is usually where I'm the loudest when it comes to like systems and operations. Find me on the regular channels of Instagram and Facebook for my name, Ching-Ron MD, where you can hear me talk about more things based on like spirituality and consciousness and how it kind of relates to health. But yeah, I'm all over the interwebs, just like you.
Very good, buddy. Well, listen, this has been great. I think if you listen today, you definitely got a better sense of how to better use AI. I think it's got a place, good and bad. And I think it's got a place, good and bad, for your practitioner. So you want to maybe ask them how they're using it. But I think today you found this powerful. If you know somebody else that uses AI for everything, and maybe they need to learn something, make sure you share this podcast today. But I hope it shed some light, busted a few myths, and showed that AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And we hope you found it fruitful and beneficial in what you've done today. So anyway, thanks so much for listening to the Trusted Podcast. And always remember that you're looking always for the truth about how the body works. Have a wonderful day. Take care.